We've come to sunny, warm California to talk about snowflakes. There are over 600,000 embryos, tiny human beings, languishing in frozen storage throughout the United States. Some think they're leftover medical tissue to be experimented on or washed down the drain. Not so with Nightlight Adoption Agency. They understand that just like snowflakes, these are unique individuals never to be replicated again. Stay with us to find out why snowflakes are so important. Nightlight Christian Adoptions is a full-service child placement agency in Los Angeles, California. It pioneered the first embryo adoption program in 1997. The program gives couples with remaining embryos the option of choosing a family to adopt their embryo and giving birth to a precious child. There are expensive fees associated with storing frozen embryos, but choosing to place them for adoption is free to the genetic family. Kelly Poffenberger is the director of the embryo adoption program at Nightlight. After years of grappling with infertility, she and her husband were finally able to have a baby. As a result of her struggles, Kelly has a heart for birth parents and embryos. Kelly, how do you define what an embryo is?
Well, an embryo is sperm and egg that are created usually in a dish, and it's when they unite and what we feel like becomes a life.
So how old are they at the time of transfer?
They're frozen at all different stages, anywhere from right after they're created until up to like a day 5 or 6 embryo. And so usually at that stage is when, at any stage during there they can transfer them, but usually most people grow them out and transfer them at a day 5 or day 6 blastocyst stage. But statistically, 50% will survive the thaw, and then 30 to 35% of those will actually transfer.
How many babies are in storage as frozen embryos in the United States?
The current research shows over 600,000 embryos that are still in a frozen state. And many of those embryos have been abandoned and will probably remain frozen for forever.
Define abandoned.
Sometimes when people are done with their IVF and they don't make a plan, they don't make a disposition plan for their embryos, either to use them for research or to destroy them or to place them through one of the embryo adoption programs or through their clinic, then if they just walk away, don't pay their storage fees, aren't involved in that kind of thing, then technically they're abandoned embryos.
What exactly is a snowflake adoption?
Snowflake adoption, that's what they named our program, 15 years ago, because a snowflake is frozen and a snowflake, each one is unique. And each of our babies is incredibly unique and has been frozen for a period of time.
In vitro fertilization is very expensive. The process for adopting embryos, is it substantially less expensive because you already have the embryos?
Overall, yes. Our program fees are $8,000, but on top of that, you're going to have to pay for a home study, which is going to be between probably $1,000 and $3,000. And then you're going to have to pay for the transfers at your clinic. So depending on how many transfers you do, that could add up. But overall, because the embryos are already created, it's a much cheaper route to go than creating your own.
Does it generally take more than one transfer?
Generally, yeah. The statistics are not that great. I mean, we do have people get pregnant on the first try, but for the most part, people have to try usually around 3 times before their success.
It's probably quite an emotional roller coaster, isn't it?
Huge emotional roller coaster.
What's the legal status of a frozen embryo here in America?
Technically, even with our program that we have legal contracts, it's a transfer of property. It's under property law.
So these frozen tiny human beings are considered property?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think a lot of people do see them as life, but from a legal point of view, they are not seen as human life. Mm-mm.
What keeps the genetic parents from reclaiming their embryos?
Well, legally they do sign a contract where they have transferred their property to the other family. And then in any of the United States, when you give birth to a child, your name and your husband's name goes on the birth certificate as that child's legal parents. So it's legal on many levels on that aspect. But I also can say these are families that are fully functioning families. They have children. They know their family's complete. They made a conscious choice to place these embryos with another family. So they're usually very happy with their decision.
How many embryos have you adopted through Nightlight?
5,000 embryos that have been placed for adoption. In that time, we've had 365 babies.
When we return, we'll meet the very first snowflake baby. John and Marlene Strage were married in 1985 and excited to start a family. But after years of struggling with infertility, they began exploring adoption options. Marlene wanted the opportunity to carry a child, but wasn't interested in the typical IVF process. Through the Strage's relationship with Dr. James Dobson, they learned about a couple who had come to focus on the family, looking to place their remaining 20 embryos for adoption.
When we were considering in vitro, I thought, well, wonder if I get pregnant with quadruplets, and then I had remaining embryos, what would I do with those? And so a coworker said, well, maybe you could get another Christian couple to take them. And I said, oh, they're doing that now. And this was 16 years ago. And she just kind of shrugged her shoulders. So that kind of set the seed in me about embryo adoption.
Tell me about the embryo adoption process and what you went through.
Well, we completed a home study, so we completed all the requirements for the state of California for adoption.
How did you guys feel when you finally found out you were pregnant?
Ecstatic, needless to say. Excited.
I remember he was on a trip, so I picked him up from the airport and I bought 3 white baby roses and had them wrapped with pink and blue ribbon. So when he got off the plane, he saw me holding this bouquet of three to represent the 3 embryos that had been transferred into me. So he knew when he saw that I was pregnant.
Hannah was born on December 31st, 1998. Not long afterward, the controversy surrounding embryonic stem cells escalated. The Strages have traveled to the White House multiple times and testified before Congress. Hannah, now 15 years old, is a living testament to the potential of giving families to the remaining frozen embryos. Her uniqueness helped inspire the Snowflake name.
We wanted to thank our attorney, Ron Stoddard, and his wife at the very beginning because he saw the vision of embryo adoption, did all the legal background information on the legalities of embryo adoption for free. So we took him he and his wife, to a Christmas play down in San Diego. And the actress said, in the intricate design of each flake of snow, we find the Creator reflecting the individual human heart. And it just gripped me, and him too. And at intermission, he turned to John and I and he says, we now have the name of our new program. It's the Snowflakes Embryo Adoption Program, because just like snowflakes, these embryos are frozen, unique, and never again to be recreated.
Hannah, what's your take on all of this stuff?
It's pretty amazing. Like, I never thought it would be possible. I'd never heard of it before, obviously, and it's just really interesting.
What do your friends think?
They don't understand it, nor can they comprehend most of it. Like, they ask me questions all the time, or they think it's like the coolest thing ever, or I get a lot of mixed reactions.
What kind of reactions do you get, and what kind of questions do they ask?
Do you know who your real parents are? Or I'm gonna write about you on my blog, or all this stuff, and it's just really cool.
You know, the fact that she's adopted doesn't enter our mind 99.9% of the time, as with most, probably every adoptive parent. She's our daughter. We don't give it any thought other than when we're asked about it.
Hannah, what is your opinion about embryonic stem cell research?
Hate it. It's technically killing people like me and anybody else that's was adopted just like me. So that means I could have died if someone did it to me, so don't like it.
These are the same embryos that scientists want to do research on for embryonic stem cell research. So I have to tell you that for that research, they want the blast-assisted age, which is like 100 cells. So Hannah would have had to been grown in the lab for days until she reached that stage, and then they would have extracted her stem cells, which would have killed her. So clearly, we're against embryonic stem cell research. We are for adult stem cell research. In fact, we saved her umbilical cord stem cells when she was born. So those stem cells are there for her life if she ever needs them.
In all of this debate about embryonic stem cell research, what do you want people to think of when they look at you?
That I'm just like everybody else.
John and Marlene, what do you think your lives would be like if you didn't have Hannah?
Probably a lot emptier. I mean, what a blessing she's been.
In a moment, we'll hear from a growing family whose snowflake children have brought joy to their lives. JV and Kathy Kennedy have been married for 14 years, but earlier in their marriage it was marred by the tragedy of multiple miscarriages. But they never gave up on their dream of having a large family. After miraculously having 2 biological children, Christian and Cambria, the Kennedys still wanted to expand their family, so they decided to pursue embryo adoption. So what pushed you over to the side of going to embryo adoption?
I think God pushed us. It just felt completely right. We just had total peace about it. Just the thought of carrying our adopted children, you know, me getting to carry our baby or babies, you know, within my body and getting to feel them move and nurse these children, you know, was like, it was the answer to my prayers.
How did it feel when you found out you were pregnant with this adopted embryo?
That was kind of a surreal experience, I feel like. I don't think we ever thought it would happen.
Yeah, it was elation for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was like pure, like, thank you, God, you know?
Was it cautious elation?
Yes, it was, but then I think that God gave me a peace, and both of us, that we felt like this is where He's led us, this is what He wants us to do, it's in His hands, He's gonna protect this baby or babies. The doctor decided, just because of the quality of the embryos and whatever other reasons, they decide to transfer more than one embryo at a time. He actually put 3 embryos into my body, and then hoping that one would continue to grow. And then when we went for that first ultrasound, we saw 2 heartbeats. So we got 2.
Tell me about the twins.
Well, they're 4 now, 4.5, and they ended up being both boys. They're not identical, and their personalities couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
But they're very outgoing.
Yes, they are. It actually is a great balance because our older 2 children are more cautious and a little bit more introverted. So it's kind of cool how God did that because the twins draw out the older 2. So it's neat.
Yeah, it's our genetics versus our adopted genetics.
Yeah, yeah.
And it mixes wonderfully.
With the twins, it was very easy. They were our first transfer, and we were pregnant with twins. But with Cole, we had to go through 4 transfers before we became pregnant with him. We had adopted 7 embryos, and he was the last of the 7 to stick. So they're all miracles, but we felt like he's our healing baby.
JV and Kathy feel called to parent and are always open to expanding their family. They're currently looking to pursue a domestic adoption. This couple loves the joy that comes with adding to their family and sees no difference between their biological and adopted children.
When I was pregnant with the twins, I had, you know, Satan was kind of whispering in my ear, like, what if you favor one of them? Or, you know, like, you have biological children and these are not. But as soon as they were born, it's like an instant bond. There is no difference at all.
And you can't imagine life without them?
No.
No, not at all.
No.
It's amazing.
And we feel as if we do share blood.
We decided to tell children that are adopted and be very open about adoptions. I know a long time ago it wasn't so much that way, but I find myself I have to remind us, oh, you know, we should get out that book again and read it to them. tell them about their story, because we forget.
Because it doesn't feel any different.
Yeah.
We almost forget that they're adopted, you know?
Right.
And what book are you talking about?
So it's pretty much just a scrapbook that describes their story. How we adopted them as embryos. It shows a little picture of them, you know, under the microscope as embryos, and it shows us on transfer day, and then it goes through and shows, you know, we've been matched, and shows the genetic family, and goes through the whole pregnancy. It's just part of their baby book, part of the whole story.
So your relationships with the genetic families is strong and frequent?
We have a good relationship with our genetic families. We feel very blessed that they are such gracious, supportive, kind people that would have, you know, given us such a gift. So we do correspond through email and Christmas cards.
What are your thoughts on embryonic stem cell research?
I think that they're finding that they're not getting a lot of answers using the embryonic stem cells. You know, God allowed us to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, that we were able to honor these little tiny lives. And He gave us, you know, 3 miracles out of it. So yeah, it's very frightening actually to me to think that there was a time that they were frozen in straws, and that it was up to the doctors that if someone had made a different choice, that they would not be here with us.
Right, yeah.
So,
And you're able to put a real life face on the issue of 600,000 plus frozen embryos in storage.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and that's why we do feel such a, you know, such a love and a connection towards our genetic families, because they made a really hard, unselfish decision, because they did what they felt was right, and they valued those lives like God values those lives.
Coming up, we'll hear advice for families exploring their adoption options. Currently, there's more than 600,000 frozen embryos in storage in the United States, with hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Whether it's an older embryo or a new one, each is a unique and precious life. For couples contemplating what to do with their remaining embryos, adoption can be a beautiful gift for a family in want of a child. Kelly, what advice would you have for a couple considering adopting a frozen embryo?
My greatest advice would be to be open-minded. A lot of people come into the program very scared and really want the perfect, pristine embryos. And I have seen perfect, pristine embryos become babies, but I have seen perfect, pristine embryos not become babies, and I've seen embryos that nobody thought would become a baby. We had a family adopt embryos that had been frozen for 16 years, and nobody thought they would become a baby, and he's a toddler now, and he's thriving and wonderful. And every time I see pictures of him, I think, oh my gosh, he was frozen for 16 years, which is a miracle in and of itself. But if people would just understand that all embryos have a potential for life.
I would say to pray about it, because you don't know where God has your child. So we've seen families that start out maybe in international adoption and then switch to embryo adoption through Snowflakes. We've seen families start out in Snowflakes and then switch, and their child was in an orphanage in China. So really pray about it and see how God's directing your path.
Kelly, it's been reported that 60% of couples choose not to offer their frozen embryos for adoption. Why do you think that is?
I just think the decision is so hard. I mean, for most of them, these are their children, and most of them have children, living, breathing children from these embryos. And so for a lot of people that I talk to, they'll say it's just too hard. I can't think about my child growing up in another family and not with me. But the side note of that is, then your child's gonna stay frozen forever. You know, I mean, at some point, you're going to have to make a decision about what to do with these embryos.
I can't imagine what it feels like to be in that place, in that position. And I know that it probably seems scary to think of adopting out your genetics, your children, to another family. But I also know that God is faithful, and I think He's gonna honor that. I think they're giving those embryos the greatest gift they could possibly give them. If they feel that their family's complete and they can't have more children for one reason or another, that's like the most unselfish thing that they could possibly do, is allow them a chance to continue growing and to have a chance at life. I just feel like it was an honor and a privilege to be a part of embryo adoption. You know, young couples, they have these plans and dreams of what they want for themselves and for for their family and building their family. But God's plans are so much bigger and His ways are higher than our ways. And it's just amazing what He's done with our family.
Most Americans understand the blessings of adoption, but far fewer have stopped to consider that hundreds of thousands of frozen human embryos need a forever family too. My guests today have clearly demonstrated that these aren't potential human beings, they're human beings with potential. If you or someone you know would like to look into embryo adoption, visit our website where you can get more information. A snowflake in your home might make your family complete. Thanks for watching. This week I'd like to offer you this exquisite snowflake display as a reminder of the thousands of precious snowflake babies waiting to be adopted. Simply visit our website at facinglife.tv and enter for your chance to receive this as my free gift to you. While there, find out how you can get a copy of today's episode on DVD or Blu-ray to share with others. And check out the resources available regarding today's episode.
Funding for today's episode of Facing Life Head On was generously provided by Home City Ice. It's healthier than homemade.